Whereas if you play the king first, you'll probably escape unscathed most of the time because they're probably breaking 2-1. But on that rare occasion that they break 3-0, you could have picked up the queen, but you now you can't. You took that option away from yourself by playing the king first. So you always want to play the ace first here. And then, of course, if the scenario is the other way around, if this person has queen third, well, by the time you find that out, it's too late to do anything about it, right? I mean, it may be that you could have done something about it if you had, say, the 10, or actually the 10 could even be here, right? Had you guessed it right, because you could have played small to the king and then run your jack or 10. But we don't expect that. It's rare enough that we don't worry about it. And again, when we just pay off to it when it comes up, right? So 10 card fit, don't worry too much about the queen. That, by the way, is, remember, I think we mentioned this briefly when we talked about our slam tries and the queen ask portion of our key card. And we gave that little qualifier. If you are in a known 10 card fit, you show the queen, whether you have it or not. Like, let's say partner opened a spade, and then you end up making a slam try in spades, and it's your partner who takes control of the auction, and you have 5 card spade support, and they don't know that, maybe. You know, maybe you started with a Splinter or Jacoby or something like that, so they assumed you had 4 card support, but they didn't know that you actually had a 5th card. Well, that's, partner hasn't found that out yet, right? There's, usually we don't know when partner has 5 card support. So this is one of those situations where we say, hey, it's safe for you to fake it and pretend that you have the queen. Because either your partner is looking at the queen and they'll know what you're doing when you showed the queen that's in their hand, or if they can't see the queen, they will assume you have the queen and you have basically just as good, right? You have 5 cards in the suit. So our biggest concern in a 10 card fit, excuse me, is when we're missing the queen, right?
King.
Or king, excuse me.
Yeah.
So maybe a situation like that, right? Take a finesse or play for the drop. Do we know? So this is a situation where we finesse. And it's similar to being in the 8 card fit missing the queen. It's that idea of, okay, the opponents only hold 3 cards in the suit, and they're likely to break 2-1. So we could have 2 over here and 1 over here. And of those 3 missing cards, which of your opponents is more likely to hold the king? Well, the person who holds 2 in that suit, not the person who holds 1, right? So what's going to happen every now and then? We're going to run our queen, or we're going to play small to our jack. Same, doesn't matter here. And, sure enough, when you play small to your jack, and this person wins the king, that might have been a singleton king. And then you draw your last trump and you see that person show out and you glare at them and you say, singleton king. But that doesn't mean you made the wrong play, right? You took the percentage play. So, you've just got to be willing to live with that. It's disappointing. And again, the hand record's going to say that you could have made this hand because you had no losers in that suit, but that involved making a play that is really against the odds, not with the odds. What about an 11 card fit?
Party time.
Missing the king. So we'll just give you a 6th card down there. Any votes?
Play for the drops.
Okay, this is correct. You don't finesse in it for the king and 11 card fit. You play for the drop. And I didn't write down the percentages. They're in the book somewhere. I don't remember what they are offhand. Yeah, but believe it or not, a a 1-1 break, I think it's right. I think it's right around 50%, if I remember right.
Even though it's an even number of cards.
Yeah. Well, we got
Yeah.
1-1 is slightly more likely than 2-0.
Really?
Yeah. So that covers a lot of your common situations. Those are the ones you're going to have to deal with. You probably won't have a ton of 11 card fits, but you'll have a lot of 8 and 9 card fits. And so your 8 card fit and your 9 card fit, missing a king, missing a queen, those are the ones that you want to be sure. You really want to be, hopefully get to the point where you are on autopilot. I mean, I never want to absolve you of thinking at the table, but it's you still want to consider the whole hand and things that could go wrong. For example, if you if your opening lead has been a card that looks suspiciously like a singleton, you might choose not to take a finesse that puts that partner's person on lead if the finesse fails. Why? Because they're going to give their partner a rough. So maybe sometimes you say, no, I'm not going to take the finesse. And you take a different line to prevent something bad from happening. This actually happened to me the other day. And it was ugly. So every card was in the wrong spot, and I actually lost to a couple of singleton kings on this hand, among other things. So that was not a lot of fun. I want to mention just a couple of terms and positions, and actually get you into playing maybe the first 2 hands here pretty quick. And so, while we're on this subject of finesses, and there are many different kinds of finesses, see if everybody is comfortable with these terms. When we just talk about a simple finesse, that's the stuff we've been talking about so far, right? Just kind of a one-time, just go back to the original position. Just a one-time, kind of either it's there or it's not type of finesse, right? Where we're missing a queen, right? So your plan is to play small toward the ace-jack. Now, one thing to keep in mind about your finesses, we always want you to be in the habit of cashing your top honor from the side that you're going to finesse from first. In other words, in this case, and now this may not be the best example, but we say, okay, we want you to, if your plan is to finesse the jack, we always want you to lay down your king first and then finesse your jack on your second play of that suit. Why? Excuse me. Because if this person over here has singleton queen, you would hate to take a finesse and lose to a singleton queen that you could have dropped. Now, I say this isn't the best example because if this person has the 10-4 or the 10-9-4, you're still losing a card in that suit, right? But sometimes you actually can pick up the whole suit, right? So if dummy actually had ace jack 10 and you had decided to finesse this way, play the king if you see, and then you lead toward the 10. We play the king, we see, okay, the queen doesn't drop, okay. Suit could still be breaking 4-1, could be that this person has queen 4, right? But you might be able to pick that up, right? So you play the king, and you play small to the 10, and then if you can get back to this hand outside of that suit, you can then finesse the jack, right? So in that case, the that simple finesse has turned into a position where you actually need to take a second finesse. But we still always want you in the habit, and especially if we're doing this, you know, with a different position, before you take your finesse, cash your big honor first, and that's just your simple finesse. Now, we could have a double finesse. Well, what is that? So this is more likely to come into play when we're missing multiple honors, right? So here we have ace jack 10, we're missing king queen. And this is the kind of thing that, again, you'll see all the layouts, all the possibilities in the suit combinations. So when you're looking at a position like this, how many sure losers are you going to have in this suit?
One.
You have to lose one, right? Because the king or queen is going to force your ace, and then the other missing honor is promoted, right? All right, so your aim with this kind of holding is to lose one and only one trick in the suit. That's what you hope for. You don't want to lose king and queen. You want to see if you can pick one of those cards up. Well, there are 4 ways that these cards can lie, and we're not necessarily talking about number of cards or how the suit breaks. This is not so much about 4-1 versus 3-2 or anything like that. This is about which hand these cards are in, right? So we could have both the king and queen on our left here. Say if south, hand with 3 little, if south is declare and north is the W with the ace jack 10. We could have both king and queen over here and no honors sitting over dummy. Theoretically, that's the most favorable position, right? That one we usually find out right away if we lead toward the ace jack. Normally what this person does is split their honors to guarantee they're one winner, right? So we usually find out about that pretty quickly. We could have the king over here and the queen over here. We could have the queen over here and the king over here. Or we could have no honors on this side and both honors with east. So how do we want to play the suit to try and hold our losers to 1? Now, we're making an assumption, and that's that south, that you can get to your hand twice, because this is going to be a double finesse situation. We definitely don't want you flying up with your ace. We don't want you playing small to the ace, because the only way that holds your losers to 1 is if king or queen is singletoned in one of the hands, right? But that's not likely, right? Because we just said 4-1 break is not likely. I mean, the suit is still 2/3 of the time going to split 3-2. So what we want to do here is we want to finesse twice. Thus the double finesse. So we can lead toward, and the jack and 10 are equal, so it doesn't matter which we choose first, but we could lead to the 10. If it loses to one of the missing honors, we get back into our hand, and then we lead to the jack. What's the success rate for this, according to the odds? If we play the suit this way, how often will we have held our losers to 1? 75% of the time, right? Because the only time that it doesn't work is when this scenario down here, when east holds king and queen. Now, just like our sad losing finesses in the other situations where we lose to doubleton queen or singleton king, it could be that king queen was doubleton over there, and maybe we could have picked one of those honors up. But again, we go back to the same adage. We just pay off to that because it's an unlikely position, right? I mean, we have 4 scenarios here, right? And in scenarios 1, 2, and 3, either one or both honors are on side, which means that this approach is going to be successful to hold our losers to only one. So that's your double finesse. You might use a double finesse in a situation where you're not missing exactly king, queen.
Could you deal with, I always have trouble with this. I have the ace, the queen, and the 10.
Okay.
Do you finesse?
Okay, so that, yeah, no,
Yeah.
but that's another one. That's what we're talking about. This
Yeah.
this is the most common situation, but yeah, isn't this essentially the same thing? You can use your double finesse here as well, right? Because the jack is a significant card. Now you don't know which the odds say that our honors are likely to be split, right? I mean, the odds say that probably one opponent holds the jack and the other opponent holds the king. Sometimes they're both in one hand, but the odds would say they're probably split. But ultimately, this still comes down to let's try and hold this to one loser. Now, is it possible to hold your losers in this scenario to 0?
Yes.
Could you actually pick up the whole suit? You could, but you need a much more favorable position, right? So if you're in a contract and the only way you make your contract is you can have no losers in this suit, how do you play it?
Small with the 10.
Small, you got to go small to the 10 first, right? Because what is the one situation that what do you need? You need king and jack both on side and the suit not breaking badly, right? You need king jack third or king jack doubleton probably on side to make this, right? So if that's the scenario, if you must try to escape with no losers in this suit, your first play should be small to the 10. And frankly, you could do that all the time, right? Because what happens if you play the 10 and it loses to the jack? Well, you still have ace queen and the king might still be on side, right? So your double finesse, you'll take a second finesse toward the queen, right? What happens if you play small to the 10 and the king is 1 over here? What do you know? You now know that the jack is on your left. With how many other cards in that suit, we don't know. But the jack is now marked, right? Because why would your right-hand opponent win the king if they held the king and the jack, right? Why would they potentially cost themselves a trick when they could have won the trick more cheaply and thinking, ooh, hey, I can win the jack now, and then when they take their second finesse, I win the king. So sometimes the position is marked. If the honors are split, it's probably not going to matter a whole lot whether you play small to the queen or small to the 10 first.
Well, if the jack is there and it's a doubleton, then you could do the hold. You could keep, if you take it with the queen, they can't get it. Well, then you have to finesse with the 10 the next time. Yeah. Okay.
Still have one loser in the suit, right? Even if you put up the queen the first time?
Yeah, you do.
If you put up the queen the first time, what do you know about how the suit lies? You know that the king is on side. The jack, you don't know. But either way, you are going to lose